Mr. President, I come to the floor today, however, to talk about the bill that is currently before us on the floor of the United States Senate, and it is a bill relating to the fentanyl crisis in our country. We're seeing it in every state of the country, including your home state of Montana, my home state of Wyoming. In so many ways, every state has been impacted by the crisis of fentanyl. Look, I practiced medicine in Wyoming for 24 years. Illicit fentanyl is poisoning and killing Americans every day. More than 74,000 Americans died last year as a result of this poison. Every state is impacted to the point that it is the #1 cause of death now for Americans between the ages of 18 and 45. When you take a look at the number of people that are being killed, this has actually resulted in lowering the life expectancy of the American people. Every American in one way or another is a victim of fentanyl because everyone knows someone who has lost a loved one to illicit fentanyl. No community has been spared. We're losing our sons and our daughters, our brothers and our sisters, friends and neighbors, our fellow citizens. Congress needs to treat illicit fentanyl like the crisis it truly is. We're going to do that today in the United States Senate. Look, our law enforcement officers are working to stop this flow of illicit fentanyl into this country. They're doing a great job now cracking down on drug dealers. That what they need and they ask for and come to us with is a desire for certainty within the law. Right now, law enforcement officers are fighting against these merchants of death, and they seem to be doing it. They have one hand tied behind their back. The Senate has an opportunity today to change that. We have legislation to the floor that's going to save lives. It's called the HALT Fentanyl Act. This bipartisan legislation permanently schedules deadly illicit fentanyl as a Schedule I drug. That's the way things are scheduled under the Controlled Substance Act. This is the reason it's an important change, because it means tough penalties for fentanyl traffickers. It means certainty for law enforcement. Now, that's going to be a law enforcement tool that they have been asking for in our effort to get fentanyl off our streets. This is why senators just on Monday evening unanimously agreed to debate the legislation. We now, after working on this, now have strong bipartisan support. In 2018, the Drug Enforcement Agency temporarily scheduled illicit fentanyl on a short-term basis under this Schedule I. They found it started to make a difference. Congress voted a number of times to extend this classification, bipartisan votes. Republicans have pushed for years to make this change permanent. The Democrat leader, he said, no. When he was the leader of the majority, he wouldn't bring the permanent solution to the floor of the United States. He would not allow us to have votes on the HALT Fentanyl Act. Why? Because he bowed to the soft-on-crime Democrats, the left wing of his leftist party. They didn't want tougher penalties on drug traffickers. That was the clear message behind the Democrats' blockade. What Americans need, we want safety, we want security, we want it for our families, we want it for our communities, and the status quo with fentanyl is not an option. Look, the border crisis of the last 4 years is what fueled the fentanyl crisis. An open border meant more illegal drugs flowing across our southern border. Most of the fentanyl in the United States actually comes from Mexico. It is produced, it is transported, and it is sold by transnational criminal cartels. Criminal cartels, they import chemicals to make the poison from communist China and then traffic it into the United States. The secure border that President Trump is delivering does take a chunk out of the cartel's bottom line, and they notice it. The cartels are actually having to shut down their drug labs. They're running scared. We need to keep them on the run. Now is the time to turn up the heat. Passing the HALT Fentanyl Act will aid President Trump's successful efforts to secure the border and to stop these killer cartels. On one point, Mr. President, let me end with this. The Senate Judiciary Committee heard from parents who lost their children to fentanyl overdoses. One of those parents who testified, Jamie Puerta of California, lost his son to a fentanyl overdose. His son was just 16 years old. Listen to what Jamie had to say here in the Senate. He said, my son had consumed what he thought was a blue M30 oxycodone pill, but in fact had unknowingly, and the man went on to say, I repeat, unknowingly ingested an illicitly manufactured counterfeit opioid made of nothing more than filler, a binding agent, and illicit fentanyl. That was deceptively made to look exactly like a pharmaceutical-grade oxycodone pill, and it killed him. We need to pass the HALT Fentanyl Act. We need to do it today. We need to turn the tide against this fentanyl epidemic. This is the legislation that deserves to become law. Every major law enforcement group supports it. Most importantly, families of victims support it as well. We have an opportunity to act today to save lives, to act now. Let's work together, Mr. President, to get it done.